Hey guys, I'm Urizi. This story is all about what if Naruto created a criminal organization. When Naruto Uzumaki's dream of becoming Hokage is seemingly stolen from him, he discovers a new path. One even more difficult and harder to reach. With a family of his own making, he will take the world by storm, showing them that rogues and outcasts of the world can stand at the top. Before we proceed with the story, please like and subscribe to this channel if you liked the video, and don't forget to check the description for the other works of the author if you liked the story. Let's start. Chapter 14, The Last Mission. Things were not looking ideal for them. Jiraiya had thought Orochimaru would send a dozen or so pawns after them once they were presumed incapacitated. It seemed like the backup plan was to go in with overwhelming force if that failed. By his count, there were 111 enemy shinobi scattered amongst the boulders and jagged rock formations. By the looks of them, they were a large chunk of Orochimaru's sacrificial force. He had fought many like them in their invasion of the Leaf a few months back. Not too strong, Chunin level at best, but annoyingly persistent. Their position was too entrenched to just circumvent them as well. It meant brute force would be required. I could easily summon Gameiken and take them down with a few of my wide-ranged jutsu, Jiraiya considered. It wouldn't be the most elegant battle or graceful, as Mr. Gameiken would put it. He would be seen for miles around, giving away their location. While the enemy already knew where they were, Orochimaru was still a known element. Saving Chakra at this point was crucial in case he showed his treacherous face. Especially when he had two kids to look after. Pervy Sage, watch over Sesame. Make sure no harm comes to her. I'll take care of these guys. One such kid ordered, cracking his knuckles. Jiraiya had a fit. Are you joking, Naruto? The Sannin growled out. His apprentice turned around. The sun hit the boy's face in full. Until now he hadn't noticed them. Or rather, hadn't noticed they were missing. The distinct whisker marks on the boy's face were gone. How or why was pushed off to the side of Jiraiya's mind. No, what he really took in was Naruto's unwavering eyes. Jiraiya nearly shuddered seeing them. The fierceness they held. They're just like Minato's during the Third Ninja War, Jiraiya realized. The boy looked more like his father now than ever before. It was like looking in a funhouse mirror. Same feeling, yet in a different form. Naruto smirked. Ha! Of course not. There will be hell to pay if you let a single hair on Sesame's head. Naruto-kun, said girl whispered. The Sannin huffed at how her face was turning red as a cherry. He knew the look well. Barely knew him for a day and she was falling all over herself in front of the little fool. At least she had the common sense to stand behind him. Not like the suicidal numbskull in front of him. That's not what I mean, you little idiot. Are you trying to get yourself killed? His apprentice stepped forward. The headstrong boy began rolling up the sleeves of his orange dress shirt. Were you not listening? The boy responded unnaturally loud. Orochimaru has ordered them to capture me. That is their objective. They have no reason to fight one of the legendary Sannin like yourself. Their master would surely punish them if they failed. Jiraiya cocked an eyebrow. A little surprised at the tone of his words, but more so on the fact the kid actually referred to him by his title. Usually nothing made the kid show him that respect. The Sannin glanced at their army of enemies. Some showing hints of doubt. Others fear, as they know full well the power of the Sannin, given who their master was. But such a thing wouldn't deter a group like this. That just makes it more important not to fight alone. Jiraiya yelled. He wouldn't let Naruto do such a thing. It was reckless and unnecessarily dangerous. It broke everything that was taught to Leaf Shinobi. Something he was only allowed to do because of his title and prestige. Yet for some reason only his mouth seemed to be moving. His body just couldn't will itself forward to pull the kid away. Naruto formed a hand seal. With a large puff of white smoke briefly covering him, 3 shadow clones emerged. 2 of them stood at Naruto's side while the third jumped back several feet behind them. The sage had seen the kid make hundreds before. Typically with a straightforward quantity versus quality approach. Not the most tactful strategy. Given the current circumstances though, if he was going to face an army it would have been reasonable to do the same in this instance. You know Pervy Sage, A powerful shinobi once said to me, I am here to be your teacher, not your father or your best friend. I'm not here to hold your hand. You have to do this by yourself or not at all. Learn to stand on my own 2 feet and act like a shinobi. Harsh words, but honest ones. So you can go ahead and save your concerns for someone else. I'm only doing what I have been trained to do. Jiraiya's stomach tightened. He recalled the words well as they were his own. Spoken to Naruto when he had asked for assistance in learning the Rasengan. It had been a lesson for the kid. With all the weight and responsibility on him, he couldn't be spoon-fed. Such a thing would only hinder the boy. It was cruel, but in order to survive in the shinobi world it was a necessity. The world wouldn't wait for the kid to grow up. He needed to find the strength to face the horrors that awaited him. Even when he had no one there to help him. That was Jiraiya's mentality at the time anyway. Reality proving much more difficult at this moment. Then and now are 2 completely separate things, Naruto. Jiraiya scolded. Having the ability and experience to see that distinction only proves you didn't understand the lesson. To his credit, the boy didn't get angry. No, beyond any reasonable expectation the kid actually laughed. Quite jovially too. Like the sage had said something ridiculous. Then the laugh became quiet and a little sad. Naruto even let out a pained sigh. I really feel sorry for you, pervy sage. But it's you who needs to learn. The boy started. His tone took a very serious and pitiable note. Like the boy was the master and he was the student. They're not different. Those things are connected in ways you don't even understand. Being a true sensei means being a parent, a mentor, and a friend. Separate but connected. They are the ones who shape themselves to their students. Not the other way around. You're either in 100% of the time or not at all. You do the role of a sensei a disservice by diminishing it like that, and I have no wish to continue to learn from someone who doesn't understand something so simple. The Sannin's jaw snapped shut. His mouth felt dry and his throat sore. He stared wide-eyed at the kid as the sun cast the boy's shadow on him. Nostalgia filled the Sannin as he felt like he truly was a genin again, being scolded by Hiruzen sensei. The wisdom contained in the words so poignant and unwavering. Much like his sensei's many talks about the will of fire. Even as the boy essentially threatened to disown him as his teacher, he felt eerily empty. The reason behind his student's attitude towards him not even causing a stir of curiosity within the 50-year-old man. He stood there silent. No more words between them. His apprentice called out to his enemies. Sorry, ladies. Just having some choice words with a 50-year-old child. To thank you for your patience with me, I'll let you all make the first move. One of Orochimaru's men stepped up. This sound ninja's combat uniform had a much more flared pattern than the rest. The mottled gray and black, full-bodied uniform had its color pattern switched. He carried a long double-bladed sword on his back with a long purple tassel decorating its hilt. Clearly he was the leader of this execution force. I must thank you, kid. We thought things would be difficult with the Jiraiya of the Sun in here, but if you want to face us alone, then we will oblige your request. Either way, even if it costs us our lives, you will be brought to Lord Orochimaru. There was no malice in the man's voice. Just a professional demeanor which was required for a dedicated ninja. Naruto shrugged. Don't worry, I'll take you all down quickly. He spoke candidly, ignoring the sound ninja's words. The man grunted, raising his hand for all his men to attack. They all drew kunai and shuriken, ready to volley across the gap between them and rain death on his student. Naruto and the 2 clones beside him crouched low to the ground. In any reasonable sense they were ducking for cover. But nothing was ever reasonable when it came to Naruto. The clone in the rear formed hand signs, taking in a massive breath of air. Wind style, great breakthrough. A massive gust of wind blew across the battlefield, the 100 metal projectiles were stopped cold. The impact of the jutsu created a barrier that sent them either dropping to the ground or careening off course by a mile. The Sannin eyes widened. He can use wind style. Since when? Between the 5 nature types, wind was the most rare within the land of fire, and arguably the most difficult to master due to how intangible it was compared to the other 4. It took years just to grasp the basics of it. Basics that Naruto looked to be far past if his eyes weren't playing tricks on him. Naruto had two kunai in his hand. A sharp blue glow wrapping themselves around the blades. The two clones beside him began making hand signs at the same time. Not bad, Naruto said. Now it's my turn. He tossed both of the coded kunai towards his enemies at an incredible speed. Not particularly aiming for anyone among them specifically from their trajectory. Ninja Art. Multi-Shadow Shuriken Jutsu Barrage. The two kunai began to multiply. Not by a few dozen, no. Having used two clones at the same time to cast the jutsu seemed to multiply the effect. The Sunin had no idea Naruto could use his sensei's jutsu either, or even the very fact that a shadow clone could separately cast hand signs for a jutsu from a distance. It was unheard of. The kid's hand sign speeds were quite dexterous already. With his clones casting them for him instead, it was just a matter of timing. Something Naruto clearly had down as well. It was brutal. Screams echoed throughout the valley from those who couldn't get away in time. Most of them in this case. The two coded kunai became nearly 1,000. Difficult to dodge. The ones that missed pelted the earth with loud thuds. The impacts chipping away at the dirt like heavy rain seemed through thin paper. Even before the last of the 1,000 kunai fell, Naruto's two clones drew kunai in both hands. Held in reverse grips, they charged at their disoriented enemies. Sprinting full tilt through the crowd, doing only single-hit attacks. All of which were non-fatal as they used their smaller stature to weave around attacks and cut at their calves or feet. The taijutsu style Naruto used had reminded him of Asuma Sarutobi's use of chakra blades and wind manipulation. Tight, fierce, and strong when up close to their enemies. Except Naruto never seemed to stay with one enemy for more than a single attack, regardless if it was effective or not. The original in the middle began to form a basic Rasengan. Instead of charging in as well, his apprentice slammed the jutsu down to the ground. He then ran towards his clone that was guarding the rear in a zigzagging pattern. The earth and rocks being torn up as he back from his position. Jiraiya could faintly hear the boy counting down from 10 as he tore up the ground. The Sunin understood now what the kid was going to do. The rear clone was already making hand signs. Another wind-style jutsu. The original stood beside him letting the Rasengan dissipate. The two clones still amongst the enemies positioned themselves behind them as shields. Wind-style, immense rock storm. The torn-up stone was picked up and blown towards the mostly limping enemies. A hailstorm of stone decimated most of the remaining enemies. The rocks pelting some that they actually jerked several times before dropping hard. The two clones leapt back towards the original. Weapons still at the ready, likely for another planned attack. Alright, my turn is done. I'll let you guys make your move. His student offered, sounding half serious. Out of the 111 enemies, not including the two Fuma ninja from before, only a dozen remained standing. Of those, all but their leader had serious injuries on them. Cuts and scrapes from a flurry of kunai and jagged stone. None looked too willing to take up that offer. It is time. The antlion appears from beneath the earth and spreads its wings in the sunlight for only a brief moment. With its birth the Keijiro dies. A deep voice resounded through the air, interrupting the flow of the battle. Emerging from the earth appeared another shinobi. An earth-style user from their choice of entrance. Not the best-looking man he's ever seen, but looks weren't always a measure of strength. Ah, so we meet again. Finally showed your ugly mug, huh? The guy didn't respond to Naruto's verbal jab. His body began to crystallize into an almost cocoon-like object. The rapidly growing shell entrapped the hunchback's entire body. Cracks began to form moments later. A burst of chakra being released. Emerging from the cocoon was a beautiful woman with pale green hair wearing nothing but a thin white gown. The emanating chakra sprouted on her back like wings. The pushed upwards allowing her to soar into the air. You were actually a girl. His apprentice yelled. The boy actually looked shocked by this drastic change. Gone was the hideous man and in its place was an angelic woman. Someone whom the Sunin would gawk at her if he wasn't already in a state of shock spectating throughout this entire battle. Naruto, watch out. Sasami called out. Keijiro is a Fumajonin who can use a forbidden jutsu. It's considered the strongest amongst our clan because it kills anyone it comes into contact with it. The user dies as a result of how dangerous it is. The one known as Keijiro seemed to collaborate with that claim. Lord Orochimaru has promised that it will help our clan spread its wings in the sun once again. But for that to happen I must sacrifice everything. I must perform the ninja art I can use only once in a lifetime. She began to build up her chakra. The pressure was so intense it saturated the air around them. The amount the Sunin felt coming from her was off the charts. A suicidal jutsu that pushed it past A rank. Interesting, Naruto hummed. He put out both his hands, forming his giant Raisin shield. You may sacrifice yourself for your clan, but that only proves you don't have the will to live and go beyond your limits. Jiraiya's heart was pounding in his chest. The kid didn't know what he was up against. Naruto, you need to get out of there. That jutsu will kill you. It's on a whole other level. Your shield won't cut it. His desperate yelling seemed to fall on deaf ears though. His apprentice dug his feet into the ground, determined to take it head on. A mad grin stretching on his face. Like he was barely containing his excitement. Hey pervy sage. You want to know something about the fourth Hokage? Something about the four Hokage? The Sunin echoed. He. 4 years to complete the Rasengan? He can eat his damn heart out. 2 of his clones stepped beside the original, both extending their hands to the massive blue disc. They were pushing their own chakra into the shield, preparing to attempt something Jiraiya had lied about only a few minutes ago. Something impossible for someone so young. Hell, it was something that was impossible as far as he knew. It was faint at first. The deep blue began to change to a stark white. It began to grow even larger than it had before. The very earth seared from its touch. The very wind around them began to scream as a new legendary jutsu was born. A black figure stood in front of the light. His visage filled with strength and endless determination. It filled the Sunin with an unbearable feeling of nostalgia. Jiraiya fell to his knees, mumbling a single name. Minato. Antlion Ninja Arts, Ephemeral. Wind Style, Raisin Shield. A flash of white light blinded everything. The Sunin could feel the Fuma girl pull on his Haori as the shockwave of the impact began to pull them in. Only gathering enough strength to stumble back did he avoid getting sucked in. He could still feel it though. Hot wind blowing hard against his entire body. The only thing he could hear was an intense ringing. The intensity of the wind chakra was so concentrated it pulsed through the air. After what felt like an eternity did the dust settle. The outcome was much more than the Sunin had expected. What was once a rugged and unique landscape had turned into a flat, lifeless field of stone. Within 180 degrees of where his apprentice had stood, everything had been wiped clear within a 200-meter radius. That included all the downed enemies as well. They were gone without a trace. The only thing left standing was Naruto. His 3 clones were gone. The boy let out a gasp as he barely stood up straight. He looked exhausted after such a monumental clash of jutsu. Yet from his smirk it seemed he had suffered no injuries during the exchange. Naruto limped back towards them, clearly happy at the result. He only made it several feet before they sprung up from underneath. It happened too fast for any of them to react. 3 enemy ninja leapt in with their weapons and stabbed Naruto in his right lung, lower back, and stomach, respectively. They dug their weapons deeper as his student tried to push them off. It was no good. He had no more strength left. The look of complete shock on his apprentice's face shook the Sunin to his very core. The 12-year-old boy who had just done the impossible had been cut down. His injuries would be too fatal to heal in time. "You're too dangerous to capture," one of the ambushers said. "Better to just kill you now." Another spoke. "Lord Orochimaru will surely reward us for killing someone so strong, ha. The 3 laughed maniacally, reveling in their victory. It only made Jiraiya want to throw up. He had watched Naruto die all the while he just stood behind him watching. He had failed to protect his student. Again. "You 3, want a reward?" His blood-stained student said, barely clinging to life. "Allow me to give you one then." Boom! In another brilliant, but significantly less massive, flash of white light, Naruto exploded. The 3 attackers screamed as the outward force blew them apart. At blank range they became little more than flaming limbs and burnt husks of their former selves. It was an instant death for all of them. Clap, 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 clap. Bravo! A voice boomed beside the Sannin's ear. From behind him stood Naruto. Not a single scratch on him or even any indication that he just fought an army or exploded into dust. His much-alive student was helping the Fuma girl on her feet after the jutsu's clash. Most likely missing the part where 3 sound ninja were killed in a point-blank explosion. How? The Sannin asked. The boy gave a lazy shrug. Paper bombs on a shadow clone. But I thought he was. Me? Ha. Yeah, right. Like I would make that big a risk. The 4 down there were always just shadow clones. Took a lot of chakra to make them stronger than normal, but I would say it was worth the show. His apprentice beamed. That was so incredible, Naruto-kun. Sasami swooned. The boy chuckled, handing out a kunai to her. Thanks, Sasami-chan. Here, you can have it back. Really helped out a lot. The Sannin watched as his student walked past him, stepping up to the destruction he just reaped. He put his right foot up on a lone rock, leaning in to admire his handiwork. So it's just down to you, huh? From the uprooted trees just past the destruction's threshold, the lead sound ninja hobbled out. His uniform was in shreds, blood seeped from every limb. He was only standing because he was using his sword as a cane. The man would most likely die unless he got medical attention immediately. How did you do it? The sound ninja wheezed. How did you beat all of us so easily? How? That's easy. It's because I was 5 steps ahead of you all the whole time. Naruto responded plainly. A look of confusion contorted on the defeated man's face. Clearly he did not understand how they were that many steps behind. Frankly, Jiraiya didn't understand that either. Sure, there was beyond masterful timing and jutsu combinations, but such a lengthy plan would have bordered on precognition. Naruto huffed. Fine, let's take it from the top. From the very beginning I used the fact you were fearful of the Sannin against you. Because I knew you were after me, I reinforced the idea to only focus on me while avoiding Pervy Sage. In doing so I split the field into 2. I knew that with your fear of a Sannin, none of you would try to flank me, effectively limiting your direct field of attack by 180 degrees. Worked like a charm in my opinion. Naruto smirked, seeing the look of realization on the man's bloodied face. Jiraiya's mouth hung open. He had thought the kid calling by his title had been strange. For it to be the first step of his plan, to be that far ahead, unreal. The next part of my plan was to root out your hidden comrades. That was my #1 goal actually. How did you know they were there? He. I didn't. But for guys that kill for Orochimaru of all people, I knew some of you were slinking around somewhere, waiting for a chance to strike. So all I had to do was whittle your numbers down to nothing. Act like my guard was down after my victory and then have them attack my rigged clone. If any more enemies were still around, then I could just make more shadow clones or deal with them myself. I was never in any harm throughout this whole encounter. Naruto held out his fingers, counting out each step. Creating a mental deterrent, setting up the battlefield, rooting out the hidden enemies, pretending to let my guard down, and finish up all the stragglers. All 5 steps explained for you as a reward for making through it all. The realization about how easily they had been played wasn't lost on anyone watching the sound ninja. He wheezed out a laugh. Clearly he found this all to be amusing, even as he was dying. I see now why Lord Orochimaru was after you. Just who in the hell are you? Naruto's smile widened ear to ear. He tipped his hat downwards, shading his blue-slitted eyes. Me? He. Just a wily fox on the prowl. Hungry for some snake meat. The man muttered something unintelligible before collapsing. Their last enemy had been defeated. A defeat that had been thought out far in advance. There was so much Jiraiya wanted to ask. So much he wanted to say. The past few minutes had pushed his very comprehension on just about everything he knew. Things he had been certain of were now mysteries to him. All because of one boy who just did the impossible. Said boy walked past him, not uttering a word to convey his monumental achievements. He glanced at his student holding out his hand to the Fuma girl, who took it in response. Let's go find Arashi. Naruto had done it. He had used all the basics Noriyuki had drilled into him since the moment they had met. The five-fist formation had decimated over 100 enemies. Something that would have been impossible for him over a month ago. It hadn't been as easy as he had made it seem though. At face value the price would make his sensei dubious if he didn't have such a large amount of chakra. The enhanced clones, the Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu, the Exploding Clone Jutsu, a Rasengan, and 2 Wind Jutsu. On top of that was the massive cake-sized cherry, the Wind Style, Raisin Shield. Naruto didn't even know he could pull it off. When he had heard the pervy sage mention the forthcoming wind to it he knew that it was possible. Noriyuki often taught him to combine his skills together. Plus, with 3 shadow clones dividing the amount of focus and chakra flow, the jutsu itself had been rough but manageable. Noriyuki's 5 aspects of wind jutsu helped theorize the flow. With it he had smashed the Hokage's record by 1,000 miles. He should have felt proud of this achievement. This was a sign that he could surpass the 4th Hokage rather quickly if he continued to build upon the skills and lessons he learned. But it felt empty. Hollow. The reason was too obvious not to know why that was. Noriyuki-sensei wasn't here to see it, he thought sadly. His sensei would have jumped for joy after seeing it. They would have celebrated his success by treating him to as much ramen as he wanted. Noriyuki would have squeezed the life out of him with pride. Naruto would have muttered something unkind about his shameless sensei's action but knew it was just to act cool. The lightness he felt when he made his sensei happy always seemed to raise his spirits. Like he really could do anything. That's why the achievement felt dull. Because the man who helped make it happen wasn't there to ruffle his hair afterwards. We're almost there. The Sound Village is just up ahead. Sasami called back. She ran just slightly ahead of them, guiding their group through the fog-filled forest. Understood, let's stop before we get there to come up with a plan. Jiraiya replied. Naruto could feel the man gazing at him. Even while they ran through enemy territory the questions the pervert was barely containing made Naruto annoyed. It was reasonable to expect that it would be the case. No question about it. He would too after all he had done. It was just irritating. The white-haired man didn't seem too thrilled by his accomplishments either. For vastly different reasons, Naruto figured. Just another contrast between his teachers. They came upon a set of stone passageways that led underground. It seemed like the hidden Sound Village didn't actually have any buildings. Just a lair where Orochimaru toiled. Quite fitting for the snake. He took a step ahead of his companions only to feel a hand jerk him back. Wait Naruto. We need to do this right. Jiraiya ordered. Relax, I was just getting a better look. No need to talk to me like I don't know what I'm doing. The Sannin rubbed his brows. His eyes screwing into his own. Oh, you and I will certainly have a talk after this, you can be certain of that. Jiraiya reached into his backpack, pulling a headband out and handing it to him. Doing this right means doing so as a leaf shinobi. Right now you aren't technically one. Naruto froze. His body tensed as for a moment he thought the man had known about his incarceration and subsequent escape. What do you mean by that? Jiraiya cocked an eyebrow. I mean you don't have a leaf headband on you. You probably left it behind with the rest of your gear when you went on your mission, right? Calming, Naruto nodded, going along with the excuse. Kakashi-sensei said it was too risky and that we could be found out if anyone saw it. I figured. So for now you can use my old one. Naruto blinked. He took the headband in his hands. It was certainly rougher than most. The black cloth holding had small holes in it. The thing was probably decades old. A keepsake for the man who preferred wearing his vagrant garbs instead. Much different than his own. The one Eureka gave him the night he graduated from the academy. The one he'll never get back. Not really seeing any reason to refuse the offer as it would only raise more questions later. Wearing the leaf headband after going without it for a month felt strange. Even as he tied it around his neck there was a foreign feeling to it. Like it didn't belong on his person. He would put up with it though. For one last time. Better. The Sunin nodded. I would rather you got rid of the stupid hat you're wearing so you could tie it on your head properly, but it will do. He muttered the last part quietly. Then the pervert's gaze shifted to Sasami. Something that irked Naruto because of the man's stupid habits. Now that we have made it here, I want you to go back to Tetsukiri Sasami. I'll have no arguments on this. Sasami blinked, a bit stunned at the demand. Her face then became saddened, like she had no choice in the matter. Which she definitely did. Naruto folded his arms, giving the pervert a dirty look. I already told Sasami-chan I would take her with me. Putting aside the fact how dangerous it is here, you are conveniently forgetting she broke the laws of a shinobi. She betrayed us and had planned to turn us over to Orochimaru. The pervert said stoically. Such deeds cannot go without punishment. Naruto folded his arms, cocking his eyebrow. Really? Then tell me, oh wise one, just what law did she break? She betrayed those who sought to help her. Hashirama, the first Hokage, laid out the shinobi rules. Betrayal must be punished no matter the circumstance, as written in the 15th tenet. Naruto wanted to scoff so badly at the man. But to do so now wouldn't do it the justice it deserved. He could only rub his eyebrows in annoyance. How you ever made it to Chunin astounds me, pervy sage. He muttered. Anyway. Sasami, you were ordered to hand us over to Orochimaru by one of your senior clansmen, right? Sasami took a thoughtful look before nodding. Yes, she confirmed. Then it was a mission? Naruto asked. Once more she nodded. Then I believe the 4th tenet of the shinobi rules says you must always put the mission first, which nullifies tenet 15. Plus, you, who are a ninja of this land who was circumventing us, foreign ninja, on your land performing a clandestine mission without any sort of authorization from Rice Paddy's feudal lord. The pervert flinched. Yes, but she wasn't doing it for her nation or village. Only for her own sake. Jiraiya meekly defended. Neither did I when I stole the forbidden scroll of sealing from the Hokage's office. I was only trying to pass the academy to become a ninja because I was given a mission by a superior I too thought I could trust. By your logic I should return this headband to you then. The moment Naruto said it, he began to untie the headband from his neck. Jiraiya sputtered, waving his hands back and forth, trying to come up with something to combat his logic. Yes, but it led to a traitor being exposed, so it benefited the leaf. Yes, and now that Sasami has failed her mission, like I did mine, she has guided us to Orochimaru's base. Hell, she only took the mission for the sake of her family. So putting aside your faulty reasoning, all that's left is the promise I made to her to find her cousin, whom, I reiterate, neither one of us knows what he looks like. The Sunin folded. The 50-year-old baby was cursing into his hands. Alright, fine. But she is your responsibility, Naruto. Naruto rolled his eyes. She always was. Not like I would leave her with you when you couldn't keep her from getting hurt during my battle. He shook his head in disapproval. Tisk, tisk, pretty pathetic pervy sage. It was only because you forget it. Jiraiya stormed past them towards the entrance, missing the small laugh he and Sasami shared between them. Thank you Naruto-kun for saying those things, Sasami whispered into his ear softly. Naruto took a calming breath. Her scent of sweet plums filling his nose made him feel warm inside. Nothing you need to thank me about. I only spoke the truth. I have come to realize recently that understanding others and their positions helps one reach truth. With truth you forge a sword that can cut down more than just a person's body but their very ideals. He recited one of Noriyuki's lessons from memory. Sasami blinked. You're really smart, Naruto-kun. He. First time anyone's ever said that to me. Truthfully, I was just fortunate to meet someone who passed his wisdom to me. The two reached Jiraiya, who was scouting the entrance to the underground base. It was wide open with no guards. Yet it was narrow enough that it could prove dangerous if they got stuck in that position. He could see the gears turning in the Sunin. Probably thinking the same thing. Best not to attract too much attention. 3 big rats will be a bit obvious, so let's send in a critter who won't. Jiraiya bit his thumb, forming the seals for a summoning jutsu. Slamming his hand on the ground, there was a small puff of smoke, with said critter turning out to be Gamakaki of all toads. "Yo," the orange toad greeted, waving his tiny arm at them. Sesame jumped slightly, tugging on his vest. "Eek! That toad just spoke." "Yeah, get used to it, girly, I do more than just talk, you know. Many say I have a terrific singing voice," Gamakaki boasted. His eyes caught a glimpse of him and he actually saw surprise in the toad's horizontally slitted eyes. "Whoa, Naruto, is that really you?" Naruto actually smiled at this. He could tell the toad liked his outfit. Something no one seemed to compliment him on yet. Although a part of him had a worry now that Gamakaki was here. He shrugged it off though, showing off his clothes, even doing a quick spin around. "The one and only." Gamakaki returned the grin. "You really clean up nice, don't ya?" "Definitely better than before, especially that actually, now that I think about it, the elder toads were wondering something about why dash." Naruto's eyes widened immediately. He grabbed the toad quickly, interrupting his words by putting his hand over the amphibian's mouth. That was a close one, Naruto internally gasped. Only a few moments after that sinking feeling did he realize he had it. Something he was really glad for. He had forgotten that his contract with the toads had been nullified. His sensei mentioned something about them knowing the contract between them being severed eventually. Gamakaki almost blabbed this in front of Pervy Sage, which would have blown his cover and brought those unpleasant questions back. Questions he couldn't make up answers for like the others. "Gamakaki!" Naruto squealed, placing the stunned toad on his shoulder before he could object. "Why don't you come join us? I have snacks you can have too." "Okay, I guess." "Naruto, he isn't a pet." Jiraiya scolded. "We need him to scout the entrance for us." "Oh? You were going to use the Chief Toad's son as a sacrifice for any potential traps that were waiting for us? No wonder the Chief doesn't like you summoning him. Did you get another son of his eaten by a snake too?" It seemed a little risky to send a toad whose father went toe-to-toe against a tailed beast just because his son basically asked him to. You didn't even need half a brain to know that was a bad idea. Jiraiya's face puckered, probably imagining such a thing actually happening. Gamakaki bobbed his head. "Yeah, I would prefer not getting eaten, thank you very much. I will take those snacks though. He. Here, Naruto pulled out some pieces of candy and gave them to his new passenger. He quietly whispered to the toad. "For your silence on that issue you were about to speak about, I will explain later." Gamakaki nodded, taking the bribe. "So instead of Gamakaki, let's be a little more tactful about this, shall we?" Naruto summoned 3 shadow clones. Each quickly appeared just before they did the transformation jutsu, turning into mice. He had done something similar during his battle against the giant stone golem underneath the prison. He figured such a tactic would work the same. Jiraiya snorted, clearly upset that his idea did indeed seem more practical. He couldn't help but feel smug at the man's annoyance. They waited quietly for a few minutes after the clones scuttled past the base's threshold. The memories he received were just about what he had expected. Dark, narrow passageways, branching paths, dangerous traps, nothing unusual at all. "The way is clear," Naruto explained. He held out his arm to Sesame, giving her a 1000-watt smile. "Would you do me the honor of escorting you through this dark and foreboding dungeon, Sesame-chan?" She giggled slightly, gingerly curling her fingers around his right bicep. "Oh okay, Naruto-kun. Arg. This isn't a date, you two." Naruto nodded to Jiraiya's griping. "Of course it isn't. Real dates don't have chaperones. So if you want to leave Pervy Sage we would be ever so grateful." The Sunin's face twitched. "Don't just write me off. You may have had your moment earlier, but I will show you that I am still the great Jiraiya of the legendary Sunin. The one that makes all those who hear my name weep in awe and terror at my dash." "Okay, we'll see you when we get back," Naruto said as the two of them went on ahead. His willful ignorance of the pervert resulting in a rather loud and audible faceplant. "Hey, don't leave me behind," said legendary shinobi cried out after them. For the first time in 2 years since her cousin left to serve under Orochimaru, Sesame felt hopeful. She had waited patiently for any word from Arashi but none came. She had searched for any clues about where he could be working but she found none. She even spied on her own clan members in the hopes she would find where Arashi was living, and only by chance did it turn into this. Only by luck, the devil's luck, as Naruto-kun had put it, did she finally reach this point. That Arashi could just be up ahead lifted her heart to times before her parents had gone off to battle and never returned. That she could finally see and hold the last of her true family, filled her with anticipation. Stay close, Sasami-chan, there are a few traps here that haven't been set off yet, Naruto-kun warned. True enough, there were spikes of bamboo shooting out of the walls. They would have skewered any who walked past them. Something that most likely would have happened to her if Naruto hadn't been here. She held his arm more tightly. Shyly she pressed herself closer to the boy. Okay, Naruto-kun. They had split up from Master Jiraiya and the Talking Toad, Gamakike, at a three-way split a ways back. They had opted to search separately, with her and Naruto going down the middle while the other two took the left and right. She didn't mind. Naruto was extremely strong and she felt good being close to him. Something she definitely felt less self-conscious about when they were alone. All these traps seemed to have gone off already, Sasami observed. There were half a dozen death traps that were evident along the tunnel walls. Scorch marks, needles, shuriken, open pits with spikes at the bottom. Quite imposing taken all together. The wonders of shadow clones. Couldn't live without them. He. Naruto joked. His relaxed voice and calm demeanor helped calm her own nerves. After witnessing his battle with over one enemy shinobi, there was no doubt in her mind that he would have any trouble facing whatever lurked in these tunnels. They eventually approached a large wooden door. Purple lights hung along the arches. A haze of some kind seemed to be seeping out from under the bottom. As they approached, it ever so slightly creaked open. The noise stretching out and echoing through the tunnels. Sesame squeezed the life out of Naruto's arm. How nice of Orochimaru to welcome us in. I'm afraid we're going to be poor hosts for him though. He. Naruto laughed at the continued walking into the chamber. Countless stone pillars littered the room. Candles hanging from awnings were the only light source for small sections of the massive room. A wider gap was more prominent down the center, but it left so many options for any watching to come out and get them. On the far end was another door like the one they just entered. It seemed likely that was where they needed to go. Hopefully then it would put them close to where Arashi was. If he wasn't here, then she was out of ideas. From how Kamakir spoke about her cousin, it didn't feel like he had been lying about seeing him here. How is it that a simple genin could escape a prison like Hojokijo? They stopped. A voice echoed around them. Rather a question she had no idea what it was referring to. Stepping out from a pillar in front of them was an older boy. He had gray hair tied back in a ponytail and wore round glasses. On his forehead was the Sound Village headband. He mainly wore purple and white, signifying a more important role with Orochimaru. Naruto. He smiled viciously at Naruto. A sick and twisted one that made her want to throw up. Sasami had no idea who he was, but she already didn't like him. Naruto pulled his arm out from her gently, signaling her to step back. While she didn't want to leave that lifeline, she knew that Naruto needed mobility. Whomever this guy was, he was in for a world of hurt. Kabuto. Naruto chirped happily. You haven't changed a bit, how's your stomach doing? The boy gritted his teeth. About the same as your heart, I'm guessing. That's good to hear. Naruto acknowledged, cracking his knuckles. Both of yours certainly won't be functioning in about 2 minutes. Oh? I guess you haven't changed either. You got one hit in our last fight and yet you still think you can beat me? Perhaps it really was just luck you managed to escape such an infamous prison then. The Kabuto guy laughed to himself. Its creepiness only seemed to hammer down Sesami's thoughts on him. Naruto nodded. Yeah, that's about right. Luck certainly was on my side. Kabuto continued laughing. Even palming his face at Naruto's simple reply. Hehehe. My, that's very big of you, Naruto. Perhaps you have grown by a minuscule amount, even if it won't help you now. Naruto shifted his hat, tapping the toe of his shoes on the ground. He then waved Kabuto forward with his hand. beckoning the older boy to him. Let's hurry this up please. Orochimaru has his ass on the chopping block after I'm done with you. Oh really? Fine then you can die first. I knew your arrogance would be your downfall. With glowing blue hands Kabuto charged forward at an incredible speed. His hands aimed to strike Naruto down. His attack targeted the heart. Naruto just stood there. He placed one hand on the column next him and leaned against it. Naruto even held his other hand out to check his fingernails. She was about to cry out to him but stopped shy when Kabuto's attack phased through its target. A stunned look on Kabuto's face as his full momentum continued to carry him forward at an awkward stride. The Naruto that had just been run through faded away. Like it wasn't there to begin with. An illusion. Rasengan. At the last possible moment. Just as the look of realization hit Kabuto's face, Naruto jumped down from the darkness above. A blue orb of chakra swirling in his palm. The attack blinded her with light as screams from Kabuto boomed through the chamber. His back took the full brunt from the attack. When the dust settled, all that was left was Naruto standing atop a prone Kabuto. A small crater marked the ground with cracks stretching out. The blonde-haired boy jumped off shaking dust from his collar. A satisfied smile stretching ear to ear. A funny thing about arrogance is that it can sometimes be confused with confidence. Like this situation. I was confident I could beat you because you were arrogant in thinking that I was arrogant. Naruto squatted low, facing his still conscious opponent. You can see the irony in it. Actually, your glasses are broken, so I guess you can't see much of anything right now. He. Impressive, Naruto. It wasn't just a fluke then. Good. Lord Orochimaru will be pleased. He's waiting for you. With a final gasp, the light in the boy's eyes faded. Sasami had thought the boy had died until she saw cracks forming on the boy's face. Like tiny pieces of confetti, skin, and clothing shed from what looked like a person wrapped inside of it. It was a sound ninja. What's happening to him? Sasami asked. A decoy. Naruto answered. Yet he knew about our previous fight and I could feel that it was really Kabuto. So how? Kriyayayayak. Well, that's easy, little Naruto. When one can truly manipulate others, it isn't just their actions you can control but their entire body. Coo. Sasami trembled. Her strength left her legs giving out to this overwhelming pressure. She shook like a leaf as her head turned to the other door. The slight crack revealed an ominous bloodthirsty warning that reached every part of her body. Every fiber of her being was either telling her to run away now or to kill herself. That she could face a worse fate should she not do either one of those two things. Sasami? You're going to be alright, Naruto spoke, trying to calm her. Yet this time they didn't seem to give her any sense of courage. Like it was futile to even attempt to run away. Nah Naruto, I can't. Even her voice couldn't come out right. She felt completely powerless. Then I will help you. Her eyes widened. Something soft pressed against her lips. Something that shook the cold dread from her system. She barely registered Naruto's face less than an inch away from hers. The realization of their current state probably raised her internal temperature by 5 degrees. Naruto was kissing her. Barely after she realized it was happening, the blue-eyed boy broke it off. His thumb tracing down her cheek. Better now? He asked. She stood up. It was less about having no strength in her limbs now, rather, the blood rushing to her head made her feel dizzy. Her mouth opened and closed a few times, only managing small squeaks. It only made her more embarrassed that she was so flustered. Yeah. He. Sorry, I saw my sensei do it to someone once and it helped them clear their head. I figured, well, you can always slap me later. Although, I can't say I didn't find it all too bad. Naruto shot her a not-so-subtle wink before turning back to the Sannin. Sit tight, this shouldn't take long. Orochimaru smiled wickedly. Even as the boy ignored him to attend to the orange-haired girl, he couldn't help but feel a sickening glee at such a specimen. There were few times where the Sannin would claim he had made a mistake. A calculation error. where the small deviations in conditions ultimately failed to meet expectations. On this occasion he couldn't help but feel giddy. Giddy that he had been wrong about this child. "Sorry about that, where were we?" the boy asked, tipping his hat, trying poorly to hide his smile. "We were about at the part where you spilled all of your secrets, Naruto-kun." "Kukyukyuku." The boy tapped his lips, trying to look like he was thinking hard about something. Nope, I think we were on this," he spoke, pointing at the wasted vessel that Kabuto had taken control of. Orochimaru didn't see the harm in telling the child. Not like it would hurt him in any way. It would probably even get the boy to speak more openly about his changes. A facsimile of the mind transfer jutsu. Our chakra possesses a host body for a short time. While it may not have anything near the original strength of the user, it is quite handy for being so far away. This didn't seem to make the child happy at all. He spun on his heels, turning around. "Really? What a waste of time then. Come on, Sasami, there is nothing worth finding down here." "Oh, and just what makes you think you can leave?" The boy barely turned his head back. Me? I just said so after all. Not like you could do anything to stop me," the arrogant boy said flippantly. This chided Orochimaru slightly. A rare feeling for him. His presence seemed to be nothing more than a speck for the boy. The most fatal mistake he would make in his short life. "You may have surprised Kabuto, but I know the tricks you used during your fight with my servants. I know of the power you have possessed." Strange how Kabuto didn't seem to be aware of it. Orochimaru couldn't help but feel satisfaction at the fact his assistant had been taken down so easily. Kabuto had always felt he knew better than most, even himself at times. He knew the boy would eventually be duplicitous, but his use never seemed to run out. It just left this very unique relationship between them. "I made sure Kabuto was unaware of your new skills. Something of a game that he and I dash. Yeah, I don't care. I rather not have to clean my ears after hearing what types of games you play." The boy gagged in disgust. It never ceased to amaze Orochimaru how simple the boy could be. It was like he wasn't aware that in an instant his very existence could be over. The life he could have would never come to fruition and would only be remembered as a loud child who died too young. Such was the futility of life. Why, the true meaning was making it eternal. The Sannin released as much bloodlust as he could muster. He would show this child whom to fear. "I wouldn't be too arrogant, Naruto-kun. I am not as easy to defeat as Kabuto was. Even with less than a quarter of my original strength I could end you faster than you could use these new powers of yours." The boy actually turned back around, only to roll his eyes, letting out a groan of annoyance at the Sannin. The arrogant, foolhardy, insignificant child beckoned the legendary Sannin over gingerly. "Come on then, if we're going to fight then get on with it already. It would have been better if you were actually here in person so you could take your ass kicking like the person you are. But I guess this will be a preview for later." It seemed the boy was too foolish to even comprehend his position. Or his recent gain in power had gone to his head. A natural development, Orochimaru mused. Then an idea popped into his mind. Something that would really shake the boy from his power trip. "Oh? If I had the time I would have been here immediately after what I have witnessed from you. Sadly, Sasuke-kun has been very demanding in supervising his training. So this form will have to do." That had gotten the result he wanted. The boy's eyes widened. The realization that his friend, the one he fought so dearly to keep out of his grasp, was for nothing. "Sasuke, no, I returned to the Leaf Village and..." "Kukyukyuku. Yes. Sadly your time away has been busy in the Leaf Village. Many have been trying to find you since your miraculous escape." It left the tracker ninja divided and spread thin enough for Sasuke to flee the Leaf Village once more. He twisted the knife hard into the boy, letting his words drive him to anger. "Now let us what this pompous child will." "I see, thank you for letting me know. Do what you can to help him," the boy replied, dipping his head slightly. Orochimaru, for the first time in decades, actually did a double take. "Pardon?" the Sannin asked incredulously. He was sure he heard correctly. It was just a shock to him that someone who was strongly influenced by the Leaf Village's will of fire had just sounded grateful at helping one of their shinobi go rogue. Especially one of the last from a founding clan. It defied logic. I was wrong to force Sasuke to come back. The boy started, fists curling tightly. Sasuke is walking a dark path, I won't deny him that, but that decision should be his choice, not mine, or anyone else's. I may not like it or even agree with his choice, but as his friend, supporting him is the only way to let him know he isn't in this fight alone. Orochimaru processed the words carefully, taking them in like they were of an alien language. For a brief moment he saw Jiraiya and the boy. Like Naruto and Sasuke, he and Jiraiya also came to blows when he abandoned the leaf. No one seemed to understand his reasonings and only condemned his actions. There hadn't been a single person in the entire village on his side. Now here stood one such boy who was offering unconditional support to a rogue shinobi. Complete bullshit. Oh? Will you support him? Then why not serve me, Naruto? I can help you grow stronger as well. I mean, no one would blame you after the Leaf Village threw you away. It must have been hard to accept that after all your hard work they still saw you as a weapon because of the Nine Tails. Perhaps you should demonstrate your new strength to them, personally. It would be nice if the boy accepted willingly. Such strength in someone so young was frankly, an astronomical anomaly. More so was how sudden the increase was. That change bordered on the impossible. The secret to that development would benefit him greatly. Before I answer that, I have a question for you. Something I have been meaning to say since I heard you were here. The boy asked earnestly. His blue eyes almost glowed with intensity. An intensity that actually made his skin feel cold. His senses were dulled in this form, but it felt like he was really there, standing in front of this genin. Speak. Orochimaru muttered. His pulse rose. This foreign body he was inhabiting began to feel uncomfortable. Something he wasn't even aware was possible. With no amount of curiosity, no, not curiosity, pity or any hesitation, the 5 words this 12-year-old boy uttered actually bothered the Sannin. When did you forsake yourself? Orochimaru's body tensed. Not just this temporary vessel. No, his real body over 1,000 miles away did. His nails even dug into the wooden chair he typically sat in. What the hell is that supposed to mean? The Sannin spewed. His frustration got the better of him. To a few meaningless words of a former genin. I was told about your history from the pervy sage. How you were passed over for Hokage, how you had impossible goals and fled the village, how you now live here, the boy gestured with his arms circling around the chamber, hiding away from those who are stronger than you. How you squander your potential because you don't really know what you're trying to do or who you are. Shut up. You're nothing but a child who knows nothing of the shinobi world. What does someone like you know about me? The boy's gaze never left his own. There was pain in those blue eyes, yet, behind them was strength. Strength that was the cause of his rage. I know because I met someone like you. He was the one who helped escape Hozuki. This piqued Orochimaru's curiosity, still bubbling below his rising surface of anger. Who? The boy smiled, a toothy grin giving him an almost feral appearance. A true shadow that can hide in the sun. Immortal yet does not waste a single day. Possesses strength beyond strength but only uses it if his adversaries show their worth. He is everything you want to be. The words spun in the Sannin's mind, trying to get some clue as to who this was. Someone that powerful just helped the boy escape and gave him power? They didn't even try to take the Nine Tails or manipulate him. The Sannin scoffed. Stop speaking nonsense. There is no such person. I would have known about them otherwise. You would have known? He 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 he. Ha 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 ha. The boy's laughter rose. His cackling even bothered Orochimaru. Like the words he spoke were truly that amusing to the child. There is truth in the saying, the greatest adversaries are those we do not know of. I truly hope you never cross paths with him, Orochimaru. He is not one who takes kindly to others taking away people's free will. Is that so? I guess that means I just have to torture the information out of you. The boys shrugged. Well then, you have my answer. Why follow someone who has given up on themselves? It's not like I'm going to wallow in some pit because I was fired from my job. I don't blame anyone, you know. Times are tough. Cutbacks and the economy, I'd imagine. Still, you make a mockery of this. Orochimaru snarled. Fine, then I shall make you bend to me right here. Then I'll dash. Please, Lord Orochimaru, allow me. A soft voice called out behind him, just as he raised his arm to strike. A boy with long pale purple hair and basic shinobi garb stepped out from the door. He was the last piece of any discernible value in this base. However, at the moment his sacrifice wouldn't even make the sun bat an eye. This servant was just someone who was slightly more powerful than his normal stock. Nothing truly special. The desire he had to help bring his clan back to power was easy to use against him. A few promises and the young man would happily lay down his life. If he remembered correctly, the augment he gave the young man was a byproduct of his experimental subject, Shin. Sadly, with little to no material that he could absorb, those abilities would be pretty much worthless. Especially against Naruto. He was to be the vessel for this encounter until one of his men managed to stumble his way back. Arashi! The orange-haired girl screamed. Is that really you, Arashi? She darted forward past the yellow-haired brat, only being stopped by Naruto's arm. It seemed the child had the sense not to let his little friend reunite with her clansmen. His pawn smiled. A warm expression filled with kindness and concern. It is good to see you again, Sasami. Arashi. Just wait a moment, Sasami, the boy commanded. The blue eyes now shifted to his pawn. I need to ask Arashi something. It will only take a moment. The girl looked hesitant, glancing back to her clansman. Only a small nod showed her complacency. Arashi Fuma? Naruto asked. His pawn nodded. I am. Orochimaru was already annoyed beyond reason at the child. Only this development held his interest because it could lead to an advantage he could leverage. While Naruto had no means of being broken besides through physical means, his companion could. And from their relationship, Orochimaru could tell that she was his weakness. He couldn't help but lick his lips. Nice to meet ya, the name's Naruto Uzumaki. Your timing here couldn't be better. The boy chirped. He hooked a thumb to the way they came. We were just here to get you. Let's get going. His pawn frowned. I'm sorry, but that is impossible. I have sworn myself to Lord Orochimaru and to fulfill his wishes. For the sake of my clan I dash. Yeah, you only did this to help your clan. That's noble of you. But you have been working for him for what? 2 years? What do you have to show for it? Dead friends. Free room and board? If that's it, well. As far as I'm concerned, if he's not going through with his end of the deal, then neither should you. Please, Arashi. Just come back with us, the girl begged. Orochimaru hadn't planned on the boy using coercion and persuasion to take one of his pawns from him, as he stood right there to watch. While the boy's words were different than some nonsense about family and love, they seemed to be striking a chord. There was a flicker in his pawn. His brainwashing wasn't always perfect, but he would have thought it would have stood up more to a few words. I can't. Lord Orochimaru has promised to give me power. I must become strong to help my clan. His pawn responded adamantly. Naruto slammed his palm into his hand. Like he came onto some big realization. Oh? Power? Is that all? That's fine then. If you come with me, I'll give you more power than this garden snake has. You must have known about my battle from earlier. I'm sure that speaks for itself. Naruto? What are you doing? The girl questioned. No, I need power that Lord Orochimaru, arg. His pawn grunted in pain, grasping his head. Most likely trying to fight off the brainwashing. Orochimaru was transfixed on this development. It was like genjutsu. In no time at all, the boy's words seemed to affect his pawn on their own. Such a power was rare. Something he didn't imagine someone of Naruto's lineage possessed. A rarity he wanted to study. I mean, what's the difference? You just want the power to restore your clan, right? How does it matter how you get it? Who cares if you didn't earn it? It's not like a clan can just survive on the strength of just one member. The Fuma clan's already divided, so why not just get the power you need and start over from scratch? But wait. Any power you are given probably can't just be transferred to anyone else. The boy shook his head. That's really a problem, isn't it? The girl gripped the yellow menace's vest angrily. Naruto, stop. You're hurting Arashi. He's in pain. Good. After all the heartache he put you through, I would hope he felt a little bad. Even if Orochimaru twisted his mind, this should help him see reason. Naruto took the girl's hands, placing them to his side. Listen, Arashi, Sasami, and Orochimaru, I guess. What I have to say is important. Probably the most important thing you will all hear in your entire lives. The boy stepped up, placing his hand atop his hat, eyes shadowed by its brim. Everyone watched the boy. His pawn's gasps subsiding slightly to take in the words as well. I don't understand. Everyone stayed silent in response. Annoyance began to refill the Sannin as this was just more of the boy's arrogance. I understand how you were considered the strongest of your clan. A lot of people have spoken to me about potential. Who has it and who doesn't? Apparently I have it. A lot of it, in fact. But that didn't mean I was just handed anything. I had to work for this strength. My sensei didn't just hand it to me like some weapon. He only showed me my true potential and how to reach it. The boy took a deep breath, pointing his finger out to the Sannin. You. As much as I hate to admit it, you could have taken over the continent by now if you showed your men that same necessity. But you don't show people the way or how to reach their potential. You take something that you can't even fathom and say it's for your own goal. To gain all the jutsu in the world. Give me a break. You use those as disposable grunts when they could make breakthroughs you never would have. Naruto waved his arms down his body. Case in point. The Sannin's eyes narrowed. Your naive way of thinking is a waste for the power you possess, Naruto Uzumaki. The shinobi world is about the survival of the fittest. Only the strong survive and the weak perish. It is by our evolution as a species and hidden knowledge from jutsu that we gain power. Orochimaru would not be swayed by such simple words. He was no gullible or mindless juvenile. The boy's smile widened. Eerily creepy and looked unnaturally stretched. Survival of the fittest? That's funny. Remind me how you got that title of yours then. Orochimaru flinched at the reference. It seems like Jiraiya has told the boy much more than I thought. Indeed, had Hanzo the salamander chosen to slay him and his two teammates at that time, all the work he had accomplished would have never come to be. What's wrong, Orochi? Pouting cause I'm right? How your death at an early age would have cut short all your achievements now. Just like you are doing so with that person you're possessing. So many shinobi only reach the level of mediocrity. Such insects are only good to be stepped on. You don't know how far they will go. And neither do you. For a long time I thought the same about myself. That I was hopeless and weak. It took someone who truly understood me to shatter through that limit. The boy pointed to the roof. His face lifted to show the very definition of resolute. So I will not be like you. I won't forsake my potential or anyone else's. On my own terms and in my own way I will become the strongest. Even as a rogue shinobi I will reach a height that surpasses all. Be they Kage, rulers of entire nations, or shadows that lurk even higher. Na Naruto. The girl muttered in awe. The boy turned around to her. Her own eyes widening from his gaze. I see it in you too, Sasami. I don't know how, but I see that same potential in you as well. So I won't offer you power. Power that is meaningless and empty. I make a promise of a lifetime to you here and now. I will show you the way. To reach past those limits too. So that when the farthest reaches of this green earth hear the name Fuma they will think of you. The boy gasped for air as he finished his rant. Orochimaru felt something he hadn't in a long time. Not since before his battle with Hanzo. Something he thought he shed in that fight. He felt terror. Tears poured from the girl's eyes at this declaration. Unbridled gratitude. No longer did the scent of fear come from her. It was like she had been purged by this monster child's words as well. I can't. What have I been doing? His pawn fell to his hands and knees. He raised his head, eyes widening like he was seeing sunlight in a very long time. Sasami? I'm so sorry. I've been a fool. I thought I could carry us forward, but I am weak. The Sunin's control on the young man's mind shattered like glass. He scampered over to his clansman. Orochimaru was too transfixed to stop him. The two embraced. A touching moment, Orochimaru would assume. If he hadn't been going through his own turmoil. Thoughts that only led to one conclusion and one conclusion only. The boy needs to die. He would go past the jutsu limit to make it happen. Pushing nearly a third of his chakra through the vessel. His normal amount was already too much for this jutsu to handle. With a lot more now coursing through this substandard core, the time he had was shredded in half. But no matter what, he would do it. He would kill the boy before he really did fulfill that pledge. Because for some reason he believed the boy would pull it off and become a danger he couldn't fight. So he had to die. Even if it was the last thing the Sunin did. Sasami embraced her cousin tightly. She had dreamed of this for nearly 2 years. While she wished the circumstances were different, this was more than what she hoped for. All that searching, effort, blood, sweat, and tears paid off. And it was all thanks to Naruto. Those words he spoke to her. They were unlike anything she had heard before. That she had strength and potential, like it was a fact. They struck her to the core. Until now she also felt like she was too meek and feeble to become strong. That the best she could do was support her clan in any way she could and to not be a burden. Now she felt different. Like she alone could lift the Fuma clan back up and push them farther than had been before. She had been angry at Naruto for saying those things just hurt her cousin. But those words had even more importance on Arashi, it seemed. It had never occurred to her until now that it was Arashi who was carrying such a large burden on his own. That Naruto's claims were so much more than to snap him back to reality. It was to force out that pain he was carrying. To free him of that responsibility. Now she had her cousin back. Everything would be alright again. I'm glad you're reunited, but it seems the restaurant manager is mad at us for making you walk out of the job, Arashi. Naruto said in partial jest. I think it would be best if you two got clear. It was true. Orochimaru stood hunched over, arms hanging at his side. His long black hair hung forward, covering all but its deadly snake eyes. She could see purple chakra exploding from the man. It didn't seem to bother her at all. Not like it did a moment ago. She could already see Naruto perform a single hand seal. He let out a slight moan, stretching out his arms and legs. His arms raised in front of him as he tilted his head down. Unlike the battle with Orochimaru's men, Naruto now looked like he was getting ready for a serious fight. Let's stand back, Arashi. We'll only get in Naruto's way. Her cousin nodded, being pulled by his arm. His eyes trailing back towards Naruto as he squared up to his opponent. They wouldn't leave until Naruto had won, of course, but she had already seen how the blue-eyed boy fought. It was best to keep their distance should the fight escalate. They would help Naruto though. In any way they could. Crash. The two were flung forward as a gust of wind pushed against their backs. Only by supporting each other did they remain standing. Sasami turned to witness the battle. Hoping that Naruto hadn't been hurt by that sudden impact. She was left stunned. The two hadn't attacked each other at all. They stood only a few feet apart. Purple chakra erupted from Orochimaru still, and an even larger amount of blue chakra from Naruto. The energies collided with one another, pushing and twisting to create gust of wind. Some of the pillars were even beginning to crack from the collision. He's incredible, isn't he? Arashi mumbled. Sasami felt her cheeks warm up. Naruto's means to help her with her fear came rushing back to her. A small smile creeped on her lips. Yeah, he is. Hidden shadow snake hands. Orochimaru's transformed arms extended towards the boy who was already dodging out of the way. He had been trying to maneuver them so that they would flank his opponent the moment he stepped out from around one of the columns. It was partially why he designed this chamber the way he did. It optimized his immense flexibility and maneuverability. Something that this boy was deficient in compared to himself. At least, That's what he had hoped. He retracted his left arm just in time for another one of his stupid shadow clones to come underneath his guard. It was difficult trying to grasp how the boy was so much shorter than him. He knew the boy's height down to the centimeter just by a glance, but after witnessing his power he had taken a larger-than-life image in the back of the Sunin's mind. Kia! The clone's quick jab was just blocked in time. This sudden speed the boy was demonstrating wasn't anything too special, but compared to his previous observations and his own current limitations he was more than keeping up. As such, any attempt to counter-attack with taijutsu was futile, as the boy only came in for one attack, usually something unexpected and different, only for him to run again. It wasn't a bad tactic. The boy had the chakra and the stamina to draw the fight out. He had only a few minutes before the body he possessed began to fall apart. The difference in his chakra wavelengths and this body were just too different. That was why his curse seal was necessary for longer-term use. While the child's taijutsu style was simplistic and straightforward, there was a hidden level of grace to it. Methodical, unrelenting, and took aim to destroy their opponents slowly. Targeting for weak points, then finishing with more deadlier attacks. It was cruel in a way. Besides that, it was very defensive. He had gone toe-to-toe with the boy for nearly 10 minutes before he calmed himself for his more finessed approach. But combined with his new speed and small size, it was like swatting at an extremely bothersome fly. Wind style, Gale Palm. From his blind spot the boy charged with his wind jutsu. He jumped to dodge it, only to realize another clone was waiting for him on the ceiling with a Rasengan in hand. Extending his neck, he struck at the clone by its ankle mid-air to dispel it. With the awkward spot being away from boy's attack, it never connected. The brilliant blue ball of chakra lay suspended in the air. Orochimaru had thought that it would disperse before Naruto could regroup. He had been wrong. Again. Speeding towards the Rasengan, another clone scooped it out of the air, completely defying Orochimaru's expectations. Such a maneuver not only saved chakra but made use of the Rasengan's principles of density to continue its use. Very ingenious to behold. However, it continued on another vector that Orochimaru was not prepared for. Using the most of his limited flexibility, he twisted his neck to its extreme. He only managed to get a tiny graze along his neck from the attack before weaving around to dispel the clone from behind. Rasengan! Erg! The Sunin let out a grunt. His eyes turned to see his body being hammered by another clone with its own Rasengan. The boy had done a 3-stage attack strategy on him, forcing him to dodge, making him think he stopped his follow-up attack, a unique distraction, and his third attack landed. If his sense of pain wasn't dulled, he would have mutilated the boy for that. No matter how perfect it was. One thing the Sunin was for certain. Jiraiya did not teach the boy any of this. He couldn't use any of his stronger jutsu, and with that last attack he could already feel the body inside beginning to break down. Any reasonable attempts to bring the boy down were now out. More extreme measures were required. The boy may have been able to fend him off, but his little friend couldn't. He sped towards Naruto, doing a feint at the last moment for the boy to dodge out of the way. Orochimaru sped in his serpentine form, getting as much speed as he could. His prey stood there like a spooked deer, too stunned to move. His former pawn, on the other hand, took a determined step between him and the girl. The young man's arms stuck out to exemplify his stance to defend his cousin. Orochimaru grinned. It was a futile attempt. It also wasn't his real objective. Like he expected, Naruto had come in on his flank to attack. Orochimaru could tell this was the real one from his scent. His shadow clones may have looked similar, but the original had this musk that the others didn't. At least, not to the extent the original did. A key weakness he would exploit. Twisting his body, he wrapped around Naruto's leg, using his full extended torso as a lever to fling the boy with all his might. The arrogant child went flying, his body crashing through several pillars before stopping. All that was visible in the darkness was a pile of collapsed rubble. It wouldn't stop the boy for long. But it was long enough to make him suffer. He would kill his friend. Show him how powerless he truly was. Stay away! His former pawn shouted. I won't let you hurt her. The Sunin scoffed, swiping his arm across the man's face to send him tumbling away like he was weightless. No. Arashi! Coo. Who would have thought? A powerless girl was the key to breaking such a naive child. This is why shinobi don't form attachments. Ultimately everything dies. Orochimaru reached out to grab the girl by her throat and snap it. She would die moments later. He hoped Naruto suffered in his grief. Just who the hell are you calling powerless? Orochimaru's eyes widened. A fist colliding with the side of his face. His entire field of vision blurred as he was lifted off the ground and sent crashing to his private chamber. He never saw the boy coming. Even from such a distance he covered it too fast. He pushed himself up as the boy walked towards him. A look of fury in his eyes. He had wanted the boy angry and now he got it. You have no idea where true strength and power comes from. Even after 50 years of life you still haven't got a clue. Strength and power come from knowledge and one's mastery over jutsu. Nothing else matters. It's what shinobi are meant to do. The boy rooted in his stance. Muscles tensing through his entire body. With a single breath he took in as much air as he could. True strength comes from one's answer, and power comes from the breath. The blonde yelled like he was drawing something out. Even below the earth the Sunin could feel a shift in the air. It was actually visible around the boy. He hadn't a clue what Naruto was about to do. 7 heavenly breaths, first breath of life, activate. With an eruption of chakra Naruto's skin took on a reddish tint and his muscles seemed to expand slightly. Moreover, the boy's pupils went completely white and an aura of yellow chakra enveloped his entire body. The look was unmistakable. It was some version of the 8 inner gates. Orochimaru had witnessed its power firsthand during his infiltration of the Chunin exam. But the biggest question was what made this different. The 8 inner gates were something he had experimented with before. Its drawbacks limited the ability to use jutsu because of the wild and unrestricted flow through the body. Not something he preferred. Interesting technique, Naruto-kun. Coo. So you plan to defeat me with your taijutsu then? Here I thought you would use something a little more refined. Ha. The only unrefined thing here is what's between your ears. This is nothing like the 8 inner gates. With this technique all my moves are improved by a whole other level. Smash. Orochimaru rose in the air helplessly. His body being battered from all sides. Flashes of yellow light were all he could take in as the faint sense of pain filled him. That was the troubling thing. What the Sunin couldn't wrap his decades of knowledge around. He wasn't supposed to feel pain. Not with this jutsu and certainly not when he was in a real host body. Only special jutsu like the one Hiruzen used to destroy most of the chakra network in his last body had hurt him. Regulating jutsu, especially taijutsu, wasn't supposed to hurt like this. Even a beating from Tsunade felt more like mild shoves compared to the boy's unrelenting barrage. His body flipped over. Facing the ground he could see the boy was already below him. He stretched out his glowing yellow arm. In the boy's palm an intense golden sphere of spiraling chakra formed. Light that cut through the darkness and blinded all who gazed upon it. Like something out of a children's tale. You're finished? Heavenly Rasengan. The last thing Orochimaru saw was a white light. He could no longer move and a part of him feared how much pain this would cause him. Cursing the blonde monster with every fiber of his soul he managed one last hand seal. He would bury this place to the ground. As a symbol for this defeat that he would never forgive. Orochimaru would have his due. He wouldn't let this child have his way. Naruto had just made himself enemy number 1 of Orochimaru of the Sunin. Sasami tucked herself behind a pillar for all the good it did her. The moment she saw the shining yellow ball in Naruto's hand she ducked for cover. The resounding explosion was making the whole chamber shake. Debris and dust began to fall from the ceiling. It was only when everything settled and the light faded that she made a dash for her cousin. He was struggling to get up as the left side of his body had large cuts running along his stomach. They didn't look good and needed to be treated right away or they could get infected. Naruto! Sasami yelled out. She needed him right now. Only he was strong enough to get them both out. I'll be right there. The boy panted. His glowing yellow aura was now gone. The insanely strong boy seemed like he needed rest as well. She couldn't blame him for that. After everything he had done for her, he deserved more than she could give. We need to hurry up, this chamber is collapsing. Naruto was right. The columns holding up the roof were falling to pieces. If they didn't leave now they would be buried alive. With both Naruto and Arashi out of action, it was up to her. She grabbed her cousin by the arm, trying to pull him up. Come on, Arashi. We have to go now. She grunted, pulling with all her strength. Sasami, Arashi said gently, you need to listen to my words. They will be the last I ever speak to you. Sasami froze. Her hand slipped from her cousin as she took in every word he said. Naruto, will you make good on your promise? Arashi asked. Will you truly make her strong? The blonde boy shuffled up beside her. You have my word. This is your decision, right? Arashi nodded. It's too late for me. The things Orochimaru did to me has already marked my death. Sasami resisted as Naruto pulled her arm. No. You can still make it, Arashi. We can get you help. We can. We can. Her emotions poured out as she reached out to him. His kind and gentle smile that she depended on for her childhood was all that she got in return. Then his eyes became firm, his gaze unlike any she had seen on him before. Sasami, bring the Fuma clan back. She let go. Only a numb feeling remained as she was carried by Naruto. Like living in a waking dream as a giant frog was summoned below a large beam of light that led back to the surface. Jiraiya standing on top calling out to them. She kept staring at her cousin. Right up until the boulders fell around him, leaving him alone to die in darkness. Sasami had lost her cousin. But she would fulfill that promise. She would bring the Fuma clan back into the light. Cheers. The room echoed with laughter and clinks of glasses being nudged together. It had only been a few hours since they escaped Orochimaru's lair. The Fuma clan had been happy to know that Orochimaru's presence here was mostly expunged, and with Sasami's safe return, there was much to celebrate. Not that he was too interested in it. Sasami had locked herself in her room. Pretty natural, Naruto figured. He couldn't imagine going through such a loss. As much as he missed Noriyuki, the man was still very much alive, and it would take nothing short of the world exploding to kill him. So for now he would give her the space she needed. He was exhausted. It was crazy how much he could go through in a single day. It was certainly a novel adventure. Filled with romance, villains, and heroes. His sensei would be proud. The issue was he couldn't sleep at the moment. He had too much to prepare for tomorrow. His gear had been one of those things. He was short of shuriken and kunai. Not expensive, but certainly not something you could just buy anywhere. He was going to have to raid whatever equipment the Fuma had later. Right now he was wiping his weapons down, especially the special kunai that belonged to his father. He never really intended to use it, but it was something he wanted to treat carefully. Ha 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 ha. You should have seen me. A loud voice yelled out. Naruto huffed. His eyes narrowed at the biggest challenge he needed to be ready for. Which currently was the man who was downing his 8th cup of sake. I took down 200 ninjas during my time in the Land of Woods. It only took me 5 minutes before they began running away. Jiraiya boasted to the Fuma Kunoichi. From Naruto's gaze they had been too plastered to care if the story was true or not. Naruto ignored him. He was content in his little booth by himself. The other Fuma ninja had steered clear of him for the most part. He had gotten a good look at the collateral damage that alley fight caused. Naruto wouldn't want to mess himself either. Sumair had apologized to him though, even made him dinner as thanks. She wasn't around either after that. Setting everything else aside, he pulled out the book his sensei wrote. The Lord of Thieves. If he hadn't known his sensei was the one who actually wrote it, he would have thought it just another suspense novel. Because he had been aware of his sensei's personality, Naruto realized the book may as well have been a personal journal. Noriyuki had only told him some of the stories during their time together. Reading some of his earlier adventures made him want to laugh, cry, and feel angry at the same time. His sensei really did find joy in freedom. Something he was able to feel for himself, as the book wouldn't have done it justice. The book made him feel less lonely. Hey, what have you got there, kid? Naruto felt the book being pulled from his hands. Jiraiya had stumbled over to see what he was doing. You're actually reading a book? Something really must be wrong with the world. Give it back. Just cool off for a second. I just wanted to see the title. As an author myself, I like to stay up to date with what the newer generation are into. Right. Like the newer generation would read your trashy books. Jiraiya ignored his comment as his eyes widened. The Sannin let out a low whistle. The Lord of Thieves. This book is ancient. I haven't read it since I was a little kid. My grandfather read it to him when my parents were away. You've read it? Naruto cocked an eyebrow. Of course. It was one of the reasons that inspired me to travel. Find my own adventures in my own path. Ha ha ha. Not that I ever got princesses to swoon over me. Jiraiya explained, placing the book back on the table. Naruto managed a small smile. A lightness filled his chest at hearing such praise for his sensei's work. It must have been very popular when it first came out. Sadly, his sensei had used a pseudonym based on some god of luck and fortune. Fitting for the man who thought anonymity was more important than just about anything. Where the hell did you get that? Naruto jolted in his seat. He barely saw Jiraiya's hand snap out in front of him to grab something on the table. The Sannin held it out in his hand, right in front of his face. The Sannin's complexion almost matched the color of his hair. It was his father's kunai. Naruto didn't understand at first. Then slowly realization built upon itself. Jiraiya's question was where he got the kunai from. Not what the kunai actually was. It indicated to Naruto that the Sannin already knew what it was. Noriyuki had told him that his father had been important in the Leaf Village. Since Jiraiya was also a prominent Leaf shinobi, he must have known who in the village was important as well. Such a strange-looking kunai just wasn't used often. That meant Jiraiya knew who his father was. His chest was pounding. It took everything he had to keep his breathing calm. If he played this right, he would not only know who his mother was but now his father. To have this opportunity so quickly was beyond lucky. While Noriyuki never told him, he gave him the Kyume to figure that out for himself. I found it while on a mission. Naruto said quickly, before his paws raised any suspicions. Where? Where did you find it? Jiraiya asked. The man's voice was getting louder. Clearly this was something the pervert was actually serious about. In the land of mushrooms. The land of mushrooms. The Sannin frowned. I see, that makes sense. Jiraiya mumbled. Not sure what the man was referring to, Naruto seized his chance. Yeah, I found it stuck to a tree. I thought it was cool, so I took it and shined it up. Why? Who does that kunai belong to? He kept his tone casual and his words at a steady pace. Even as the vibration of his pounding heart reached his ears, he managed to sound like he was mildly curious. Totally aware of what that kunai meant to him and keep that fact from the pervert. Jiraiya scoffed. Don't they teach you anything in the academy? This kunai is legendary in the shinobi world. The signature weapon of none other than the Hidden Leaf's very own Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage. All the other words following that faded away. Naruto's ears began to ring. A loud, steady, pulsing sound. His control over his breath became erratic. With just a few words, Naruto's world felt like he was falling apart. Like nothing really made sense anymore. He could feel his blood warm his knuckles as they began to pool and drip from his tightly clenched fists. He knew pain was the only way to keep himself from falling to pieces. Naruto felt a push on his shoulder. Hey kid, are you alright? He needed to respond. Something simple or he may throw up. Yup, I'm fine. He wasn't. The words forced themselves out like bile in his throat. I was just surprised the kunai belonged to the fourth, you know. He is my hero after all. And the man who made him a Jinchuriki. A supposed death sentence. He couldn't keep up the act anymore. He needed air before he collapsed. He needed to be away from here. I know it's a bit shocking to see it after so long. Jiraiya said. It really takes me back when he Hey, where are you going? The Sannin jerked back as he pushed past the man. His idiotic, stupid, moronic bullshit was the last thing he wanted to hear right now. Out. Pushing as much chakra he could, he made several shadow clones, hoping it would throw off any who tried to follow him. The cool air of the midnight sky was like a bandage for Naruto. The openness helped to settle his stomach slightly. It wasn't enough though. Not even close. He bolted as fast as his body could carry him, not even caring about which direction he took. Grasslands and trees went by in a blur. His strength and concentration was all but useless right now. He kept running though. Running until his aching body couldn't take it anymore. Even the pain of exhaustion dulled his anguish. The tears and pulled muscles felt like soothing to his aching heart. He needed that distraction, even if he regretted it later. If didn't let everything out right now, he was sure it would likely kill his very soul. Managing to get to a small clearing with tall grass, he exploded. Why? Damn it. Damn it. Damn it. Damn it. Rah. Using the last drops of his jutsu, he tore apart the surrounding trees, grass, and rocks. Anything in his way was run through with an unrelenting fury. When he reached the last of his energy, he drew up in a small portion of the Nine Tails. He knew that there was a risk to doing it. But that's exactly what my father wanted. He raged, tearing down another tree. Naruto felt betrayed. He had the right to know who his parents were. They all knew. All of them. Yet they all sat and watched as his headband, his birthright, was taken from him. He had asked the old man time and again who they were, and now Naruto found out that it was all lies. It wasn't just him either. Kakashi, Pervy Sage, and Noriyuki. He collapsed to his knees. Really fighting now to not throw up. Oh no. No 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 no. His sensei. He had forgotten about him. Especially now when everything became so messed up. He wasn't around much when my father was a young man, but he was always there to support us when we were in need. He even showed my grandson Hikaru how to use a bow and arrow. It seems he will be quite the marksman like his great-great-grandfather. He recalled King Kakeru's words. How he spoke about Noriyuki. It now dawned on him why he helped him that day. It wasn't because he was a Jinchuriki or for his talent. It's hard to believe I have great-great-grandchildren, isn't it? My great-grandchild died a few years ago. His name was Minato Namikaze. The big mystery was now worn around him like his outfit. It was because he was family. That was the big reason why Noriyuki helped break him out and took him under his wing. Noriyuki was his last direct relative. His grandfather. The realization of this made things inside him twisted. Both in absolute joy and sickening dread. He had a family. Real honest-to-goodness family. After 12 years of nothing but empty memories was someone who he was actually related to. Plus a whole extended family that he had no real depth of. Why didn't he tell me? If I had known then I would have. I don't want you to feel any obligation towards your father or towards me. I want you to make your own choices. Promise me, Naruto. Oh. He was now seeing his grandfather's reasoning. With his father being the Hokage and the man he looked up to since childhood, not knowing their connection. For 12 years he looked up to him as a ninja to surpass. Now he didn't know what to feel about him. The man had sacrificed his life, his wife, and his son's happiness to protect the village. Noble and tragic. Had this been a month ago he may have understood it. But now was different. Those sacrifices, Noriyuki would never have had to make them. He said he would have stopped the beast without worry if he was around. He would never make that sacrifice. Never would have left his child without a parent. And now neither would Naruto. Not anymore. He never really lost anything before. Seeing as he had nothing to begin with. As he gained family and grew stronger, there would be those that would seek to take them from him. Scum like Orochimaru and the rest written in Noriyuki's book. He wouldn't let that happen. He lay back. His breathing returned to normal. The Nine Tails chakra and his own rage subsided. Things are really different now, he pondered, staring up at the clear night sky. Now he knew there was a different path for him to take. If he had known the truth about his father before, he probably would have ran back to the village, just to ensure that sacrifice wasn't in vain. He gambled putting the strongest of the tailed beast into an infant, not knowing the outcome. To be honest, Naruto, I think they have been deluding you in your village. While you may have been told you were a hero, but personally I don't think you are. That's right. He made a choice. Now I have to live with that choice. No matter what, the 9 tails will be sealed inside of me, away from doing harm to the Leaf Village. But everything else is optional. Naruto laughed, kicking his feet up. Despite this bomb dropped on him, he didn't really feel upset about his sensei not telling him the truth. He had been right. Again. He hadn't been ready, especially with their heavy talk on his airship. But now he wanted to talk to him again. Really get everything out into the open. Really tell Noriyuki what he wanted from him. What he wanted the man to be to him. Tell the shameless man that he... Naruto, I have something to tell you, and I know it won't make sense right now, but I want you to know I love you. A stray tear slid down his cheek. He had been so shocked by those words. No one had ever said them to him before. Noriyuki held him so tight it made Naruto realize if he did indeed ask him, his sensei would have let him. Like he never really wanted to let him go. But Naruto knew it wouldn't be fair. He had his own life and Noriyuki knew that. Still, I wish I could have said it back. He spoke sadly into the stars, lips curving upwards before he kicked himself back onto his feet. It just means I'll have to catch up to that idiot and smack him until he realizes what an ass he was. He would get past this. Go farther than anyone else before. His stupid grandfather was in for a reckoning the next time they met. It would be him as his tag-along next time. Naruto couldn't wait. They were coming along the last bend towards the Leaf Village. It had been 2 days since their departure from the land of rice paddies. Within that time the two didn't speak to each other. Not because Jiraiya didn't want to though. He had brought up that talk they were going to have. A lot to cover after everything he had seen the boy do. But Naruto had said that it was best left until they got back to the village. The boy wanted Tsunade to hear what he had to say as well. A reasonable request given his changes. Best to get those who were closely involved with the boy up to speed at the same time. It just sucked watching the boy wordlessly shamble alongside him without saying a word. The kid was still wearing those ridiculous dress clothes which stuck out more now that he had his old Leaf Village headband back. There was just something about the look that rubbed him the wrong way. It really didn't help that card dealers he had lost a lot of money to wore the same thing. But Jiraiya wasn't petty like that. We're almost there, Jiraiya said. The boy just nodded, looking like he was half listening. Or at least that's what he assumed with the kid's hat tucked in lower, covering most of his face. Sure enough, they had come over a hill and in the distance was the Leaf Village. The sun was nearly setting, so the sun overcast brightly on the great stone faces. While he spent a lot of his time away on his different assignments, he always loved going back to the village when he could. Especially now that he had additional motivation to go back. If only his sensei was a fiery blonde with giant breasts, he probably wouldn't have left. He increased his cadence, going down the hill, only stopping when he realized Naruto had stopped back at the top. The boy stood there stoically, staring off towards the village. Like the kid was seeing it for the first time. Naruto, hurry up. The boy put his hands in his pocket, slowly making his way to him. There was an odd look in the boy's eye that put him off. I'm out of time, Naruto spoke cryptically. Out of time? What does that mean? The boy turned to him, looking up into his eyes. The deep blue staring at him with an unreadable look. Pervy Sage, I have a question for you. Why did you decide to train me? A bit off guard by the kid's voice, Jiraiya folded his arms. I thought I told you already. You just looked a lot like my last student. Your resemblance to him is uncanny. Uncanny, huh? The boy mumbled just loud enough to hear. Jiraiya was getting fed up with this. There was something going on and he couldn't wait to get back to the village. Naruto, just what exactly are you? Oof. The Sannin grunted. The boy had basically tackled him. Naruto's black hat fell off his head as he buried it in Jiraiya's stomach. The boy's arms wrapped around his Haori. He's giving me a hug, the Sunin realized, now more confused than ever. Not that it wasn't cute to have your little protege show such affection for one's master. It was just he preferred curvy women hugging him than snot-nosed brats. He placed his hand on the boy's forehead to push him off. The moment he did, everything changed. He had closed off a lot of his emotions over the years. Decades of pain and sacrifices tended to do that for shinobi. Especially if they had fought in 2 major wars. Occasionally he had those tender moments of bonding with his comrades, but they were fleeting at best. A shinobi endures all hardship, but it was typically best just to avoid such hardship to begin with. It was cowardly in a way, but it's how Jiraiya dealt with it. Now it seemed all those buried emotions came rushing back to him like a storm. He didn't know how or why, but he could feel the boy's emotions. Those deep feelings of love and attachment he had. Now by force it seemed they brought back his own feelings as well. It was so much his hands began to shake. Naruto, he is Minato's child, my godson, this thought pushed its way forward in Jiraiya's mind. He never thought much of it. A promise he just wasn't capable of keeping. Now he had this overwhelming urge to hug the boy and never let him go. For all the pain it could cause him in the end. But to his surprising regret, the boy let go first. Picking up his hat in the process as he turned around. Jiraiya hadn't noticed it, but Naruto had put 2 objects in his hand, Minato's kunai and the necklace of the first Hokage. Both were treasured keepsakes. I don't understand. Naruto adjusted his hat. Keep them. They aren't important anymore. I know this might not make sense now, but, well, you'll find out the truth from Granny before I do. Naruto, please tell me what's going on. He begged. Desperation was taking over as his gut was telling him something completely inconceivable. I'll listen to whatever you have to say. I'm your teacher. Not anymore, his godson said adamantly. From this moment on I have no more teachers or senseis. I find my own path and stand on my own 2 feet. The boy clenched his fists tightly, his back casting a shadow on the Sunin. I may never become Hokage, but I promise you, pervy sage, I will surpass everyone. Jiraiya was at a loss for words. He could only watch as the last of his family had just cut ties with him and his home. The boy turned his head, only showing part of his face. A smile stretched across it. I don't know what your true reasons were for approaching me, but I've learned gratitude is a truly wondrous thing. So for the last time, I say this. Thank you for everything you have given me, Jiraiya-sensei. Jiraiya choked up. It was like Minato was right in front of him. Reborn as a younger man like his days as a genin. He reached out his hand to Naruto, to stop the boy by force if he had to. Just to keep him from leaving him. Poof. And he was gone. A shadow clone, Jiraiya whispered. He fell to his knees. Just like that he was all alone. He thought if he ran back as fast as he could he may be able to intercept the boy. No, he would just find a way to avoid me, he thought bitterly. Nothing made sense. Naruto reappears completely different than he was a month ago. Shows skills that make him almost indistinguishable from his father. His attitude does a complete 180. Finally, he just decides to abandon the Leaf Village. So many questions with no answers. He collected himself. Turning towards the village to find out just what the hell was going on. He clutched the kunai and necklace in his hands. Whatever was happening, he would put an end to it. Jiraiya of the Sunin would bring his godson back. Naruto had just finished packing the last of his gear. He was ready to go. The last thing he did after he watched Jiraiya walk away with his shadow clone was to tie Noriyuki's red necklace around his neck. He gripped it slightly for some kind of luck. He knew his grandfather certainly believed in it. Although it was probably cursed like his last one. Are you sure Master Jiraiya won't find out? Sasami asked. She stood slightly off to the side. Her own travel bag hung over her shoulder. No, he won't. My shadow clone has a sizable amount of my chakra. It should last long enough to make it back to the village. Won't they be in for a surprise? If you're sure. It's me who should be asking you that. This path I'm on will be dangerous. I won't force you, now. Sasami nodded. She definitely looked determined. I promised Arashi I would become strong, so I need help to do it. She even sounded determined too. A good sign. Well, you're in luck. The place I'm heading to should have resources just for that. Shall we then? His new travel companion ran slightly ahead of him. She gave him a very mischievous smirk. Let's get going. The sooner the better. He. I guess we should. They were going to be heading west after they left Tetsukiri. This town was certainly colorful, but it was certainly not a place he would like to live in. Something about it just didn't make it feel like a put-down roots. Naruto hoped Sasami felt the same when she rebuilt the Fuma clan in full. Speaking of which, he thought to himself as he eyed Hanzaki leaning against a building they were passing. He saw him say a few words to Sasami. She nodded and smiled, giving him a small wave. Take good care of her. The Fuma ninja said as he walked past. Of course. Without her you'd all be shaking down princes in alleyways for the rest of your lives. He. He heard the large man mutter something akin to a curse. Naruto couldn't stop laughing. It was certainly one of his better lines. Noriyuki would be proud. The gate was just up ahead, and beyond that lay the lands to the west. Sasami had stopped though. Standing in the middle of the street. A boy stood in front of her. A very familiar one. Wavy dark blonde hair, purple long sleeve shirt and a purple scarf. It was the boy he fished out of the river yesterday. It seemed he already recovered from his fever. Naruto saw both of them turn towards him as he approached. Serious looks on both faces. He barely got 2 seconds in before his former ward sprung a question on him. Please, will you help me? Canonical Omake. Noriyuki-sensei's fourth special challenge. Naruto rolled his shoulders as he tried to really get the strain out of his muscles. It had been like this since he got that stupid seal put on him. It really sucked not being able to move properly. He wanted to complain, but then Noriyuki-sensei would just laugh at him and say that it would make him grow taller or something. The heightest bastard. Come on Naruto, time's a-wastin'. He knew sensei saying as he skipped along through town. Asha did sensei. You wouldn't say that if you were being slowed down. Who says I'm not? Arg. You're unbelievable sensei. Ha. Thank you. How kind of you to say that. That wasn't oh never mind. He sulked to himself. Suddenly something caught his eye. Naruto turned his head slightly, seeing a round object wedged in between some wooden crates. It was striped with several different colors. It was a ball. His childishness getting the better of him, and seeing it looked abandoned, he pulled it free. It was a rubber ball, similar to the ones he used when learning the Rasengan. He bounced it to the ground. The bounciness propelled it back up. Sweet. Free ball. He cheered. Oh? Found some treasure, have we? Noriyuki asked, turning his head to take a closer look. It's just a ball sensei. Hey, maybe we could. Naruto held it out for a moment before pulling it back. He almost fell into the same pit as before. Pervy Sage had blown him off when he asked to play catch. Noriyuki would probably say the same. Noriyuki's green eyes twinkled. You actually want to play catch? Sweet. Hirate never wants to play with me. Or apparently not. Okay then. Let's play catch. Naruto shouted enthusiastically. Sure, let's just dash. Crash, asterisk. Both snapped their heads off to the sides as they heard shouting and the noise of shattered glass. The noise was coming from some pottery store. There were a lot of ceramic plates and glass in the window. It looked like something only fancy people would ever use. Don't walk away from me. A man shouted as a familiar woman ran out the front door. Akumi. Noriyuki said, surprised. It was Akumi. The woman that he drew a portrait of 2 nights ago when she was. Naruto had difficulties looking at her at the moment. For his own personal reasons. But from what he could hear from her was painful sobs and crying. Out of the corner of his eye he could see a purple bruise on her right cheek. Someone had hit her. Noriyuki took her hands. Akumi, what's going on? She was a total mess. Naruto could barely make out her words between her sobs and crying. Everything came out too fast or completely jumbled. Whatever happened to her was likely really bad. Then, without any warning, his sensei kissed her. Full on the lips. Flat out with no warning. What the hell, sensei? Have you no shame at all? Naruto screeched, pointing at such blatant scumminess. Better. His sensei asked the stunned woman. To the boy's surprise, Akumi nodded. Yes, thank you, she said, embracing his sensei. Noriyuki ran his finger through her messy blonde hair. I'm guessing this shop belongs to the ex-boyfriend who didn't take too kindly to your art classes. Akumi nodded into Noriyuki's jacket. That was all the prompting his sensei needed to do something crazy. Madam Akumi, I'll be right back. Naruto and I have to do something quickly. His sensei beckoned to follow him into the pottery store. Noriyuki even snatched the ball from his hand. Sensei, what are we going to do? His sensei turned with a mad gleam in his eye and an even madder smile. Why, we're going to play a very special game of catch, of course. That's it for part 8. Thank you for watching and see you on the next video.